We're back with another episode of the Warrior's Heart podcast. Sitting down with Mr. Darren Weeks. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to do some fun stuff. We're going to start out with a little bit of rapid fire, and then we'll kind of get into exactly the content of the podcast here today. We're going to be talking about finances. So let's hit it. Best financial book you've ever read?
Easy, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Best financial lesson you've learned?
How much time do we have? I would say understanding what wealth really is, and I'll probably talk about that. It's making sure your passive income is more than your expenses. A very simple wealth ratio.
The correct answer would have been don't get married. We'll get back to that. Stocks or real estate?
Whatever you study and believe in, but I'm a real estate guy. I don't do stocks anymore. I can tell you why later.
Best investment you've ever made?
Personal development, always learning. It's the best investment anybody can ever make.
I like that. Worst investment you've ever made, other than getting married?
Twice I got married. That was expensive. Didn't learn the first time. Anyway, great lessons. The worst is just anything to do with investing with people that are bad partners or just not good people.
Worst. What's one thing every warrior should know about money?
There's plenty of it. There's an abundance of it, and all you need to do to get it is ask.
Nice. What's one habit that can change someone's life?
I would say having the discipline to look at your finances on a regular basis and start, and I'll talk about this too, start with an investment savings account.
What does freedom mean to you?
It means I can travel the world and not have to ever worry about money.
Nice. I appreciate that. That was a pretty quick rapid fire thing. I like that. We're going to dive into every bit of that, so I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, the comments about marriage are all in jest for people watching, especially the fiance who may or may not be watching this. I'll be getting married soon myself, so be my second. Yeah.
Good luck.
So, Mr. Darren Weeks, thank you so much for sitting down with us. From what I understand, you go way back with the founders in a lot of ways. You mentioned Robert Kiyosaki. I know you're a friend of his, and we want to hear a lot of your background, your story. But let's go ahead and jump into it, man. Tell us a little bit about you and why you're here today.
Well, I am, one of the original investors of Warrior's Hearts, and I'll explain why. But more than anything, and if people listening, obviously a lot of people come to the property, but when I came here 10 years ago, I really fell in love with it, and it's spiritual. So I've been traveling a lot in the last 9 months, and I wanted to have a nice mental break. So I came here for 3 weeks just to hang out, just to walk the grounds, talk to people, just to relax, I guess, and enjoy the nature. So I just really love coming here. I talk to some people on occasion, but generally speaking, I just come here because I want some of my time and just to enjoy nature in Texas.
And what better place to do it than Warrior's Heart?
It's gorgeous.
Not just the terrain, but the environment here. People that are starting their lives over again, people that are healing, going to war with their demons. I mean, it's a battleground. And when you walk on a battleground, you can feel it. You can feel the spiritual connection to the land. Not just what's going on here now, but what's, the history of the land, dating back to Mason Creek down there with the Indian artifacts and everything. This is a good place to unwind and to do that.
Yeah, that's my favorite walk on the property is down in that area by the creek. And it's good to see there's water in the creek again, so I'm happy we've got a little bit of rain.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's raining out there this morning a little bit. But this, the theme of this episode overall is going to be life after rehab, rebuilding your finances, future, and freedom, right? That's what we're talking about. And that's something that can be very difficult for a lot of people, and it's something I've been working on a lot over the years. But you're an entrepreneur, investor, author, educator. We mentioned that you're friends with Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That was the book that you had mentioned, which is on my reading list. I just haven't got to it yet. Soon. There's a long stack of it. But, that's what we want to jump in today. Your story, who Darren Weeks is, take us back to where you're from. Now, you said something about Canada.
Yep.
I'll leave that alone. Go ahead.
Yeah, born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And the one thing I always wanted to be was rich. And I did start a seminar business when I was 35. So some of the comments I'm going to share with you, I've asked hundreds of thousands of people. And one of the questions is, when you were young, how many of you wanted to be rich? And every single hand in the room goes up. But then what happens? So that's the question I want to unpack today. But for me, what happened was I was just driven for some reason. I think I was born with prior knowledge or something. I just wanted to be rich. My parents didn't finish high school. They were not rich. But I just never lost that dream. I always had strong desire. So I did unique things that most people would say would be unique. Buying stocks when I was in grade 6. Saving money to buy my own car when I was 15. And I could go on and on. But I always wanted to be rich. And at that time, there were 2 roads, and it's very similar to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book. And that's why I love the book so much. I read it when I was 34. Mm-hmm. At that time, I think I owned 12 properties. And a lot of people, 12 properties, that's amazing. Well, I didn't really make any money. I could explain that as well. But the 2 roads were exactly what's in the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that's why when I read that book in one night without stopping, I thought, finally, somebody's speaking, my language when it comes to money. And for almost 30 years, I had no idea. Mm-hmm. And even though I was a successful real estate investor and, had a business, et cetera. But most people, the reason they lose that dream of being rich is they don't have any mentors. They don't have anybody to follow.
Right.
Like at Warriors Heart, you have people to follow. You have people that are successful, have got a good track record. So when it comes to money, that's a big part of it is like, who are you following? And most people don't have anybody.
So you didn't necessarily grow up like dirt poor or rich. You were, I guess, kind of in the middle, and you just always had an interest in it.
Yeah. My dad was in the oil business, so he was out of town a lot. Talk to some people now, and I look back at my childhood. It was really unique because there was no drama. Mm-hmm. My parents didn't fight. My dad was an alcoholic. He drank beer on occasion, but, everything was normal. Mm-hmm. So, I played hockey, and, we never went without food, but we weren't rich. It was a 900 square foot house for 5 people. But they were always supportive, my parents. Mm-hmm. And again, great parents. But what they told me, the minute I said I want to be rich when I was 6, no problem, Darren, you have to go to university. So that was always in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. When I hear your story, I think of my own upbringing. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. We grew up relatively poor. We had everything that we needed. Mm-hmm. And every now and then a few additional things, but comparatively poor. And sometimes people grow up poor. They want to have nice things. They want to be rich. Was there anything specific that fueled your desire for that?
A car, first of all. And
Mm-hmm.
when I had my money saved up, I had the car when I was 15 and a half and I had it ready to go. My car was 1979 Buick Skyhawk. And the reason I say that, it was $500. And the reason I say that is because it was my money. I still remember.
Yeah.
And my
it's
neighbor.
a great car too.
I liked it. It was,
Mm-hmm.
it was, for me, it was like, I was so proud of it. I got goosebumps thinking about my first car. The paint job was $600. And Mr. Peel, my neighbor, painted it. But I wanted a car. I wanted to have the mobility. Why? Because then I could go places to work to make more money. So that was always in the back of my mind is how do I make more money?
Did you learn some lessons early on in life that really impacted you and you still look back on today in the early days of your financial history?
I did. One thing I learned, it was probably in the 80s or I guess in the 80s, Japan's economy was doing very well. And I watched a program on TV, and basically what it said was rich people own businesses and real estate. Mm-hmm. And that never left my mind. So when I finally did get to university, I barely got in because my grades weren't very good. I went into business. Mm-hmm. And when I was in my 3rd year university, I bought my first property with no money, no job, no credit because I'm a university student. So I always remembered that. That was one of the big lessons, and I've always believed in that. And now I realize as I look at rich people, typically they have real estate, they own a business, and of course they have integrity.
You said you bought your first property what type of property was it?
It was a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath condo in Mill Woods in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
And aside from the fact that it's in Canada, it sounds like a pretty good deal, right?
Well, I've never paid rent. Mm-hmm. So, that was kind of thing. When I looked at, I was getting married to my first wife. We met when we were 15, high school sweethearts, and you have to move out when you get married. So I said, okay, where should we live? And I started doing the numbers, and I realized if I own something, it's almost the same payment as rent. But how do I own? And again, I'm going to get a little bit deep maybe, but instead of studying in university, I would look at how to buy real estate. Mm-hmm. If I asked a banker, how can I buy a property? I would get a different answer if I asked 10 different bankers, which I did. So by putting all those answers together, even though I was failing my courses, I had meaning to know how to be rich. So I put together a way that I could buy property with no money, no credit, no job. And I bought a dozen.
To me, that kind of illustrates the difference between academics and those who are really doing what
Right.
it is that you're looking to do. Going to college for criminal justice, for example, will teach you the basics, teach you the principles, but the practical application thereof, you need to learn from your field training officer. So it sounds like you went straight to the field training officer, as it were, and started asking questions and building your own ideas, which is impressive. It's exactly the way that you should do it. Go to the people who are actually doing it and learn those tricks early on.
Yeah.
So what was your area of study in university and college? What were you focused on?
Well, because I learned that lesson that rich people own real estate and business, I had to get into business. The challenge was I had to go to grade 12 for 2 years because I didn't get good marks. So I couldn't get into university. So I finally got in, but I could only get into arts. And at the time, in where my city, my province, the economy was terrible. Like the unemployment rate was like 13%. So if you got an arts degree, you pretty much couldn't get a job. So I thought to myself, well, why do I want to go to school, have this stress, get into debt if I can't get into business? So I finally got in and I started to study business. And I started to realize, though, very, very quickly, they didn't teach me anything about owning and operating a business. The path that they were really suggesting you take, the one and only path, in my opinion, was how to become an employee. And in my mind, I don't remember the Japanese rich people saying that they were employees. They were business owners.
Business owners. So their strategy was to entry level and work your way up to the top rather than going
Totally
straight
corporate.
to the top.
Yeah, totally corporate.
Gotcha. So you graduated with an arts degree. Where did you go from there?
No, I did get into business. I got got a business degree. Okay, I'm going to actually tell another story. Just as I was in university, just thought about it. This might relate to some of the warriors out there that are my age. When I was in university, got married in 1990, and I was in Las Vegas for my honeymoon with my wife. And again, it's all paid for by ourselves. Didn't have an extravagant honeymoon, trust me. But that was when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait.
Really?
Okay? Around that time period. And there was a movie called Arachnophobia, and it was the movie about fear of spiders. So I was reading the newspaper in Salt Lake City on the way home for the connections to get to Edmonton, and this gentleman created a T-shirt, and it was called Iraq No Phobia, with Saddam Hussein's face and on a spider and something to do with a gasoline pump. Forget what it was. Back then, no Google, right? So I contacted him, and I got the rights to sell those T-shirts in Canada. I had to pay $1, and I took the contract and took it to my legal professor and didn't make a whole bunch of money at it. But the point was, I was always thinking about putting all those lessons in school into practice. So again, that just came to me. I haven't told that story for a long, long time, but it kind of fits with, the theme of the warriors here too.
So you were hitting it early. You're taking chances wherever you can.
Yeah, always.
Kind of a side question here, but when you were in college, because it kind of pertains to what most of us experience, not all, were you a drinker, were you a partier, or were you really focused on education?
I drank 2 times in 5 years when I was in university.
Gotcha.
Because I self-funded, and my wife, my girlfriend at the time, we self-funded our own university. So I never partied. I didn't have time. Every day after school, I would teach power skating and I'd referee hockey, literally 6 days a week. So we never had time for that. Wasn't really an interest at all back then.
It wasn't really one of mine either. You know, I was a teetotaler back then. I didn't start drinking until I was into my career a pretty good bit.
Yep.
College, kind of the same thing. I paid for my tuition myself. My dad paid for my books. I devoted more time and energy into the education, although I didn't get the highest marks in the world. I wasn't an A student, but still kind of a similarity there in those early days. Now, when I went back to work on my bachelor's degree, things are a little bit different.
Okay.
Then. We'll leave it at that. But a lot of us fall into that trap. We go to college, start partying. Next thing you know, we flunk out, and then have to go back later on in life. You hit it, you approached it, and you got good grades, and you were also applying what you were learning with the T-shirt idea while you were in school. So, what was the plan after school?
Well, the plan was after school to get a job, but your comment you just made actually is the opposite. I got terrible grades.
Yeah.
So I had to go an extra semester. And I failed one course 2 times, so then you almost get kicked out. So I had to appeal that failure. I had to go to a tribunal, and they let me stay in school. And this is the most demoralizing part of the whole story. Was for all these years, I've been told if I want to be rich, I have to go to university. I finally get to university. struggled to get into business and realized this isn't what it's all cracked up to be. When I bought my first property, I remember showing the pro forma to my friends in the back row of our class, and nobody was interested. And I was like amazed. I'm saying, this is business school. Aren't you guys interested in this? And they just weren't. So when I finally graduate, you can apply for jobs on campus, and you have to give them obviously your resume and your marks. I didn't get one interview because my marks were some of the worst marks in the history of the university. So now I've done 4.5 years of school. I can't get a job. So I was totally depressed, demoralized, and said, this is not what I signed up for. So it was a big shock. I finally got a job because I knew somebody in the government, and I worked for 2 years, and then I quit and just started buying real estate, and I've never looked back, really.
Gotcha. Now, the statement that you made about to be rich, you have to go to university, that came from your dad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. My mom and dad.
Which factors in a lot to what we do here in our coursework, I guess you could say, in our healing, in our therapy, when we do our Lifeline project. We start with family roles, family rules, the influences we have as growing up in family. And that was one of the ones that you took with you into college. To be rich, you have to go to college. But are you saying that you found a little bit of the opposite to that?
Completely the opposite. So not only did my parents tell me that, and again, looking back, I was 6, but why would I take advice from somebody who's not rich? My parents were not rich. They didn't finish high school.
Yeah.
But in their hearts, that's what they thought was the best, for their children. And then when you go to school, guess what the teachers tell you? You need to go to university, just like they did.
Right.
Right. So society is just continually shaping you to go to university, thinking that's the answer. And again, I didn't think it was, and I started to go down a different track, but I was never validated until I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. All that time between when I graduated and read the book, which is 12 years later, I always felt, is this the right thing to do or not? Because I never had anybody explain the other path. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is 2 different paths, 2 different ways of thinking. One's not better than the other. It just depends on your goals.
And it seems the tide is changing with people pushing their kids towards university, to college, to degrees, everything else. Very expensive education that they may or may not be able to make any money with, and have, saddled with a lot of debt. I've been seeing the shift a lot with people pushing their children towards trade school, to work in a skilled trade, something that's going to be long lasting that you can make money with for a long time. A lot of the degrees coming out these days are culturally, based on what's going on in the culture at the moment, but may not be sustainable. Welding, plumbing, mechanic, we're always going to need these type of electricians, we're always going to need that. In those skilled trades, my son is a welder. He's going to make a lot more money than I will in life, just from a normal hourly paycheck kind of situation, right?
Sure. No, I agree. I mean, with AI, another consideration, there's going to be a lot of change, and some of those jobs are, at least as far as I can see, will never be replaced.
Yeah. Yeah. People that, work in the social media, that may be replaced completely by AI in the future. I don't know.
Yeah.
But AI is not going to be able to, weld 2 pieces of steel together or fix your car, typically. Curious though, what was the government job you mentioned when you graduated college?
It was for a guy named Norm Peterson. He was the executive director, and my wife's uncle really got me the job. And again, I want to repeat, back then the unemployment rate was like 12 or 13%. So 400 people applied for that job, and I shouldn't have gotten it. But because of my wife's uncle, he was very high up in the government, I got the job. So Norm Peterson was that character on Cheers, right? So I'll never forget his name.
That's why that's familiar.
Yeah.
Norm. Yeah, gotcha.
So I had an interview, and they didn't call back for a few weeks. And all of a sudden, I got a call to go see Norm, and I had a coffee with him. And then he basically said, "Okay, you've got the job." And I worked directly for the executive director as a financial analyst. And I do want to say as well, though, there's nothing wrong with the job. I got tremendous experience from him and from that job, which I've never forgotten. And it allows my businesses to grow because I got some really good financial advice. So experience is something else that is a good thing if you do have a job. So Norm gave me a chance, and I worked there for a couple of years. When I started buying properties, he would tease me that I was a slum landlord. And when I quit, we shook hands, and he said, congratulations, good luck on your future.
So let's talk about the shift from Darren Weeks, the government employee working for somebody else, to Darren Weeks, the entrepreneur. Yep. What was that shift like?
Very scary. Yeah,
Yes.
very scary. So I remember telling my mom and dad, I was at their house, my dad specifically, I said, yeah, I quit my job and I just want to buy real estate and I've got a small business idea. And I'll never forget this. He looked at me and he just shook his head and he says, I can't believe you quit a perfectly good job, word for word. And it was like, wow, So I saw a Christmas gift for my parents. It was a Canadian piece of Inuit art.
Mm-hmm.
It was marble rocks of different colors, and there was a motif on the front of it, sandblasted out. And the one that I bought was translucent, so you put it up to a light and you could kind of see through it a little bit. And I gave him that for a Christmas present. And when I bought that at the mall, on the back there was a sticker and it said David Burnett, Montreal, and the phone number. And the lady who sold it to me had a French accent, because you don't have any French accents where I live. Quebec is very far away. So I did the math. I'm thinking to myself, well, I asked her some questions. And it kind of got a little bit uncomfortable because I asked these questions. She's kind of looking at me, are you crazy? I said, so where do you live? Well, she goes, in Montreal, Quebec. I said, so why do you come here? She goes, I come every Christmas for 6 weeks. The author or the artist sends me out to sell these. And then I said, and I should have, well, where do you stay? And she goes, at the hotel. And she kind of looked at me. I was just curious. I'm thinking to myself, so this artist pays her wage, her flight, her hotel, her food, and they make enough money? So guess what I did? I phoned the author. The author, keep saying author, the artist. Mm-hmm. And then I started that business in Western Canada. I would buy his product, and then I had mall setups at Christmas, and I would try to sell the art, at other times of the year. But that was my first real education. That was my business degree, by doing that business. Mm-hmm. And I realized really quickly I had no idea how to sell anything. Zero clue. I didn't know how to do marketing, sales. I had no idea, even though I had a business degree.
Right.
Yeah, no idea.
And it was scary, you said. Now, let's talk about that for just a moment, because fear in sobriety, fear rules us,
Sure.
especially for those of us, and we're going to talk more about this when we find that we have to start over in life. Mm-hmm. We work very hard to achieve something, and then that something is gone. And when we try to start over again, it's a daunting task. It's a scary task. We want it back right now as opposed to having to work for it. But we're also, at times, at least speaking for myself, scared to try, because I'm scared of failure again. I'm scared of losing that again because it hurt so bad the last time.
Sure.
Right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that fear. But what was your fear going into it, leaving this job and going into the next? Did you have, let me ask it this way. Where'd you get the startup capital to start doing property procurement and everything else, investing in these business?
Well, that's an interesting question. Again, I haven't thought of this for many years. So, I'm young still, obviously. My wife and I, at this point now, we've got a couple condos that we're using as rental properties, and we bought a new house. Mm-hmm. So we go to the bank, we're both professionals. We're starting to get some credit. And the banker goes, okay, yeah, you can qualify for a $15,000 line of credit. So when I phoned David, the artist, I said, how much inventory do I need to buy? And he goes, if you had about $15,000, it'd be perfect. So I thought, okay, great. Go back to the bank. And she goes, oh, sorry, you don't qualify. She goes, we did the credit checks. You're too young, whatever. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, this also goes to the point of the danger, for instance, of not having a backup plan if you have a job, if you're an employee. Because the economy was so bad, I worked for the liquor board as a financial analyst. So all the government stores all the liquor stores were government. So the government says, why are we paying all these high-priced union employees when we can privatize? So they were shutting down every single store. And I remember when they did this announcement, Norm Peterson, my boss, was making the announcement to hundreds of people. People had been there for 20, 25 years. They're crying. I was only there for about a year and a half. And they handed out packages to everybody, and it would tell you how much severance you would get based on your tenure. I was the last person hired there. Mm-hmm. So I look at it, guess how much the severance is for me at only a year and a half of employment?
15,000.
Bingo.
Wow.
So what do? I go see Norm in his office, and I'm trying not to be excited that everybody's losing their jobs. I'm trying not to smile. And I said, Norm, it's really unfortunate this has to happen, but I just started, so obviously I must be the first person to go. And he goes, Darren, close the door. So I close the door, I sit down. And he goes, no, you're not going to go anywhere. We like you. We want to keep you. And I said, no, I don't want to be kept. I just want my severance. I want to start a business. He says, okay, tell you what. You work for 6 months with this transition, then I'll let you go with the package. So that's a perfect that was perfect. Got the package, got the money, bought the inventory. But once the inventory is bought, the 15,000 is gone. I don't have money for food, right? Now I have to sell the inventory, and I had no idea how to do that. So that's how I got the money. One lesson is the banks are not your friend, and I want to definitely talk about that today. How to raise capital from your network. And the other one was, again, you may want to have a little extra money set aside, not have it all in inventory.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into that. Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about a lot today, but let's go ahead and jump into that. What you illustrated is a perfect story. When God closes a door, opens a window, however the sayings go. When one chapter closes, another one begins. And it could be a daunting task, but maybe something is perfectly aligned. When I lost my career, didn't know which way I was going to go. And it took a couple of years for me to figure that out. It even took rehab and then sober living and a few other things going on for me to really figure out which direction I was heading in. But some people figured out a little bit quicker. Door closed for you. Another door was standing wide open for you with that money and the investment. So let's jump into that path that you took with that. And the banks are not your friend.
Right.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Well,
educate us, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I guess that's a big misconception, and I had a lot of them when I was younger because of society. So the first thing that I was told, if you want to be rich, is you need to go to school, particularly university. The other thing I learned about money was, and this is what most people do, is if you want to be rich, you should save your money, invest for the long run, and of course, the banks are your friend. And when you look at it, in my opinion, the most profitable industry in the world is the banking industry.
Right.
And you ask anybody, literally anybody, and I've done this with hundreds of thousands of people, has anybody ever had a bad experience with a bank or they couldn't get a loan? And every hand goes up. Everybody. But when I was young, I was under the impression all you needed was a good idea. You don't need a good idea. You need collateral. And the banker, bought thousands of properties. They've never asked me for my report card, ever. So the banks are not necessarily your friend. But to get started, how do you do it? Well, what I started to do was I started to borrow money from my friends and family. And eventually, when I ran out of friends and family, kind of expanded because the banks are not your friend.
Right.
So I was doing that before I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. After I read the book and Robert mentored me, I went from 12 properties to 5,000 properties, basically.
Oh, wow.
Not using my own money. And if you look at any big entrepreneur, Elon Musk is going public with SpaceX. He's not using his money. He's going to raise $1.75 trillion of somebody else's money. So that's the key lesson. And again, I want to back up because a lot of warriors, if they're restarting and whatnot, I don't want to think, okay, I can't do this. It's not that daunting. And I'll explain that today. All the warriors have really an advantage because they're warrior class. People trust them. They like them. They're honored that they served us. So asking for money, there's a way to do it, and I can help you with that. It's not that difficult. It's not that daunting. And that's all I did was I started asking other people to lend me money to do deals together.
So if you're trying to raise a large sum, right, you go to the bank, you're beholden to that bank, interest, you got to bring something to the table, et cetera. But if you spread it out, small amounts over a lot of people, would you say it's easier to come up with the money that way for the investment initially?
Yes. So, again, financial vocabulary is important. So there's debt and there's equity. So if you're going to buy property, let's stick to property. If you're going to buy a house, they say, what's your down payment? So the down payment's equity. So then the bank, if you have the equity, will give you a mortgage. So typically it's like you come up with 30% equity and the bank will give you 70. So I just convinced people to give me the equity. So the 30%, I would talk to my mom at first, my mom, my dad, my uncle, my cousins, like low-hanging fruit. And then after that, I started to go to teacher conventions to do marketing to teachers to say, would you like to own, real estate, make passive income for the rest of your life, and convince them to invest with me and have legal agreements and all that stuff. But that's getting a little advanced. I did it for years just with, friends and family and just small investments. And when you pay people back, they're pretty open to giving you more after that. So I had a good track record, was very conservative. So I just started small because the banks were not my friend. Yeah. They were not. Still are not.
No.
No.
I can't imagine that they would be for anybody.
Yeah. I've never got a bank loan for my business. Never.
Wow.
Real estate, yes. Business, no. It's not even worth it to me. It's like, I don't want to go through their hoops and the fees, the interest rate. I'll just self-finance myself. I'll use other people's money rather than the bank.
Mm-hmm. So if you had to kind of encapsulate you, business owner, investor, property owner, I know we say entrepreneur, author, et cetera, but.
Yep. My financial formula, and this is, again, something that each person should consider, and there's lots of ways to do it, but my financial formula is I build businesses that give some cash flow, and then I take that money, put it to real estate, and it gives me more cash flow. In the real estate I buy now, it's not like the first 12 properties where I did everything and managed everything. Now I don't manage anything. I don't look at the properties. I just give it to people that I trust and get me a return, just passive.
Test that out.
Yeah, I'm not good at dealing with tenants, and I don't maintain things very well. I'm not good at fixing things up. So
Gotcha.
I just passive investments.
But you have the intelligence and head for business. I've always been considered myself the opposite. I'm good at fixing things, and I'm good at a lot of menial tasks and this and that. But I've never had a head for business.
Okay,
And I've tried. Before I came here as a client, and then after I was in sober living, I ran a business for a buddy of mine. It was a food truck, Italian ice. Had fun with it. But I've never had that much of a head for business. And one of the things that you've kind of illustrated was one of the things that always scared me off. You can't guarantee the income.
Right.
Sales next week for a food truck, for example, if it's storming, you're not making any money because
Right.
people aren't going to be out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't make any money, what happens? You don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of consistent income is one of the things that always terrified me, right?
Yep.
And trying to make sure that I had enough money coming in to pay the bills, which can be scary for a lot of folks. How did you overcome that?
It was difficult. It seems like this is something else I learned after I met Robert Kiyosaki, and he had a mentor named Buckminster Fuller.
Heard of him?
Okay? And one of the things that Buckminster Fuller taught Robert taught me and many people, was money seems to always show up in the nick of time.
Yeah.
So what happened with my $15,000 loan? Showed up in the nick of time. So I've never starved, but I've had some stress, obviously, and whatnot. And it just seems like there's other ways I would make money too. So, for instance, I mentioned when I was in university, I used to teach power skating and referee hockey. And I became a pretty good referee, Olympic caliber referee. So even though I had my businesses, I was still refereeing 10 games a month. So a little extra cash, here and there, and you just hustle to do what you need to do to get your business, off the ground.
It's funny that you mentioned that. God is watching out for us in a lot of ways. In sober living, when I was running that food truck, I got a rebate check from a pharmaceutical company that was part of the Crohn's treatment that I do, Remicade infusions and whatnot. Long story short, they sent me a check for $6,300, and I thought it was owed to one of the doctor's offices. Did all the research I could, verified 18 ways from Sunday to make sure that I could keep that money, and they said, "Man, God bless you. You can keep it."
Yeah.
Wow. So the money did come. It really did, and that was able to, put it in the bank, paid what I needed to pay initially, bill-wise, and then just kind of lived off of that for a little bit. So you're right. The money does come at some point when you need it the most. Let's jump into the Robert Kiyosaki part of it. You mentioned him a couple times. And I've heard his name 1,000 times. And like I said, I haven't read the book yet, but I need to. How'd you initially, you mentioned you read his book at 34. How'd you initially come into contact with him?
Well, my first wife called me, and I was talking to her on the phone, and she goes, I've been watching Oprah, and there's this guy on Oprah that you'd really like. And she goes, "Is our house an asset or a liability?" And, we kind of bantered back and forth, and I kind of just said, "It's not an asset. We have to pay for it every month." And she goes, "Man, I got you this book. It's called Rich Dad Poor Dad." So I read the book. And like I mentioned, I read it in one night. And the relevance to that comment was, and this is, I think, super important. Ever since I graduated from university, 12 years, I bought basically one property each year on average. I don't think I read one book because I hated school so much. I was so disillusioned with the whole process. Reading books, taking tests, failing or barely passing. I was just I was so irritated. And as a Canadian, there weren't very many books that were relevant. So that was kind of, for me, something I noticed later on was an opportunity. Most of our literature was American. Talking about 401ks. We don't have 401ks. Talking about the 1032 exchange. We don't have the 1032 exchange. So when I read Rich Dad, I really want to make sure this point comes across. I've always taken action, and I've lost money, and some things worked and some things didn't, but I learned from every one of them. But once I read that book, I immediately went on the internet. This is 2001. So I didn't go on the internet much back then. It was new, literally. And I said, I want to see Robert Kiyosaki live. Maybe he'll come to Edmonton. And back then too, I was very cheap. I didn't have a lot of money. And even though I had 12 properties, there was always something going wrong where I had to put money out of my pocket to fix them. Mm-hmm. So I Google, and he had a 2-day course that would teach you how to start a business based on his philosophies. And I'm not sure if the podcast can put a picture up of his book and or the cash flow game. He created a cash flow game, and originally the book Rich Dad Poor Dad was the brochure for the game. It's a 200-page book. Mm-hmm. So the publishers and the game company said, this is not going to work. You can't have a 200-page brochure. So they're separate products, but the cash flow game is like Monopoly on steroids. Mm-hmm. So the cash flow game, when you play it allows you to buy property, but not with real money. Invest in the stock market, start a small business, do investments. So the reason that Robert created the game was that's the way people learn. And your behaviors are going to come out in the game format just as they would in the street. So the 2-day course to become, I guess, partners with the Rich Dad organization, to be a business owner and then teach the game to people in your community, I thought, this is magic. I can teach people, maybe do business with people. The challenge, when I read the fine print, $10,000 for 2 days.
Oh, wow.
US. I'm a Canadian. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of cash. And the flights to San Francisco, car rental, food. It was a big deal.
It's an investment.
Big investment. Mm-hmm. So talked to my wife, and it's like, we don't have 10,000, but I have a credit card. Right? So I remember nervously putting it on a piece of paper, and again, my age is showing again, but I faxed it into Rich Dad, mm-hmm. And I went to the course, and 200 people were there. Mm-hmm. And in 2 days, I learned zero on how to build a business. Really? Robert wasn't even there. Mm-hmm. It was like, what a waste of time. Mm-hmm. But the first requirement was go back to your city, host a cash flow game, record it, and send in the tape to Rich Dad to make sure that you learned how to, facilitate the cash flow game properly. So, Robert, guess what percentage of people only did the first step? Record the game, send in the tape. Out of 200, what percentage?
Probably at least 90% of them, I would think.
Because you'd think, because $10,000, right? Mm-hmm. Less than 10% did the first step.
Wow.
And that was like, wow. So that's a lesson to me for everybody listening is you don't need some brilliant idea. You just need to do the hard things. Do things nobody else will do. And most people don't do the hard work. So all I did was videotape my game, send it in, and I was approved. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now I'm going to do my real first event, and it was just after 9/11. So I'm going to blame that on the low attendance. But I rented a room for 60 people, and I was charging like $35 to come to my event. 4 people showed up. It's like, wow, I got my ass kicked. Mm-hmm. But in the back of my mind, I heard Robert's voice. Because in between the training and my first game, there was like 3 months. And there was another opportunity where I could go listen to Robert speak for $1,000. So I did go to listen to him speak. And what he said changed my life dramatically. He goes, entrepreneurs are going to make mistakes, and it's okay. And that was like, wow. Because yesterday I went into the art studio here at Warriors Heart, and I had bad memories. And I talked to Daniel, and he's a great guy. He runs that place. It's amazing how creative they are. But the reason I've never gone in there in 10 years is because in grade 6, my teacher said my art was ugly.
Really?
Really. Yeah, my snowflakes were cutting out to give to the old folks. She goes, yours aren't good enough.
Wow.
Right? So ever since then, whenever I made mistakes in school or would fail a test, all of university, I felt stupid.
You took it hard.
Totally stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So when he said, it's okay to make mistakes, God wants us to make mistakes. How do babies walk? They try, they fall, they crawl, they get up, they fall, they try it again. It's like, okay. So I did my first event. I didn't do very good. I had 4 people. The next one I had 7, mm-hmm. So it was like all these aha moments of all this trauma I had in, my background that said, okay, it's a new way of thinking. It's a new road. It's a new path.
There's lessons in everything that we do, even in the failures. There's a lesson in it. We can let it demoralize us and prevent us from entering that art room for 10 years, or we can learn from it and charge ahead. And there are people who learn from it and charge ahead, and there's others that just have to take a seat for a moment. Right. And a lot of us can find ourselves on either end of that spectrum.
Sure. Been on both. Still am in many things.
Exactly. And you were in your mid-30s when you were learning this. Now, the older we get, the more we feel our time is short. We got to come up with a solution like right now. So many of us want that quick fix. I want to be able to, let's take gambling, for example. So many people may take this $500 and go get rich, in Vegas or whatever, because they want that quick fix, but it isn't always a quick fix. Starting with the event you went to in San Francisco, how long did it take for any of this to really come to fruition?
About 3 years.
Yeah.
And after 3 years, Robert called me. And during those 3 years, every 6 months, Robert would do an event in Phoenix, and it would cost $5,000 US. So again, this isn't cheap to go to these conferences. And every time I would go, I'd come back to Canada, and I would learn something, and my businesses would keep getting better. My seminar business specifically. I went from 4 people, 7 in Calgary, 11 in Vancouver, 28 in Toronto. And then 2 years later, I had 800 people coming to my events.
Wow.
So Robert phoned me and said, I've been told about you. I heard there's some crazy Canadian traveling the country doing these really big cash flow games. And he goes, I want to say thank you. And Robert, I was the only one of 200 people doing it in the whole world.
Really?
The only person. So Robert said, I want to come up to Canada just as a thank you because you're helping fulfill my mission. And that's a big part of this. It's mission driven. He said, I want to come to Toronto or anywhere you choose. But I said, no, let's go to Toronto. I have a big following there and I'll do an event. Now, in my mind, the first thing that went through my mind when he said this was, of course, I was excited. But the first thing that really went through my mind was, oh, shit. I know Robert charges $100,000 to speak. And he wants to come and speak for me. So where am I going to get $100,000? And then in conversations, luckily I didn't say anything about the $100,000 fee. And eventually he said, and obviously, Darren, I'm not going to charge you anything. Don't ask me for flights or anything. This is, get choked up. It's a thank you for helping me with my mission.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he came to Toronto. And ever since then, we're friends and I've traveled all over the world with him. Robert and I never exchanged a penny ever in our lives. And we don't have a contract, just a handshake. Wow. It's all mission. He's a Marine, ex-Marine, retired Marine.
I didn't know that.
Helicopter gunship pilot in Vietnam.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Because the immediate thought that most people would think, at least me anyway, when you hear the description of how you get involved in this, is that like a pyramid scheme? People would think that. But obviously it's not. And when you talk about cash flow, I know that that's kind of the behind the scenes thing when they're looking for new people in financial, within Warriors Heart, and they bring them in and they play cash flow.
Sure.
Right. And I thought, what the hell's going on here? They play a board game, it makes sense. It obviously it makes sense now. But those lessons are being taught in a variety of ways across the country. And you were a part of that from the early days. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back, it's, just again, it was a really good experience. Started with reading the book, but taking action and realizing that failure is part of the journey.
Yeah.
So again, people listening, we've all failed, and I would say, okay, just realize it's okay. Hopefully, you don't make the same mistake twice. We all know that saying, but it's just normal. And if you're starting over again, I want to talk about that today too. It's not a big deal, especially because you're warriors. A lot of you are warriors. You have this advantage of people already trusting you. I mean, if somebody says, I was a police officer, firefighter, military, immediately, first thing comes to mind is trust. And if you want to do business with people or you want investors, that's the most important thing. Trust, and they have to like you. That's it. And you've already got that. Nobody can take it away from you.
And kind of feeding off of that, many of us think, well, I'm not educated enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not, I don't have a business degree. I don't have a financial mindset, which is what I think all the time. But at the same time, we have to remind ourselves, we were soldiers. We were first responders. I was an American law enforcement officer. Every day was different. Every time I showed up, it was something different. And I had to figure it out on the fly. There ain't much I can't do. There ain't much I can't figure out if I put my mind to it. Same thing with military. You know, they've done so much in their career. Not to mention, all of it was hard in some way or another. All of it was hard. Did we back down from that challenge? No. We figured it out, and we went forward when we were in that field. This is a slightly different field because we're doing it for ourselves. Now, much in the same right, though, mentors. Mentors are a huge part of that. Do you think you would have been very far without him, without Robert Kiyosaki?
You know, to really self-analyze, to answer your question, I mean, I owned 12 properties when I was 34. But in my mind, I wanted to own 100 because a friend of mine had 200. But every single time I would think about owning 100, guess what happened? My mind said, you can't do it.
Right.
And you know Blair Singer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another common friend of some of us here, and he's an advisor to Robert Kiyosaki. He calls it your little voice.
Little voice mastery.
So if I ask people at my seminars, oh, how many people think owning 12 properties would be good? How many like to own 12 properties? All the hands go up. And then I ask this question. How many of you honestly, when you put your hand up, also had your little voice say you can't do it? And almost every hand goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest thing we have to conquer is the little voice. So would I have grown as much as I did without Robert? I highly doubt it. I was damned and determined to be rich, but I don't think I would have had the same journey at all. Like he was a huge, huge mentor. But it's that little voice that we have to really practice to get rid of and to conquer. And the best way is to ask other people what they did.
Yes.
You know, like here, when I come and hang out, just for people are wondering, if I come and hang out, I have lunch with everybody. We played pickleball last night. We go for hikes. I just tell people, hey, I'm just here to recharge, just to chill. And again, they teach me so many things. Scott took me shooting the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Canadian. I don't shoot too much. And it's like, wow, this is world class. These guys are world class. So it's no different. He trained in that for years. So for me, you know, it's relatively easy for me, but I've done it for years.
Yeah.
So if I want help with shooting, I'm going to go talk to a number of people, but Scott would be my guy, right? So if somebody has questions on real estate, yeah, I'm open. I want to share. I want to help.
And the same thing applies in our recovery. We talk about it in the rooms of AA all the time. Align yourself with the winners, right? Find somebody in that group that has something that you want. They've gotten their life back together. Their finances are better. They own property. They're getting married again, whatever. Find out what they do, what they did to get to that point, and then align yourself with them. That's something that all of us are taught in AA, and the same thing applies to any aspect of life, whether it's shooting or welding or business or anything else. Align yourself with those people. So let's kind of capitalize on that a little bit and talk about it from the standpoint of somebody exiting a treatment program or starting their life over again in general after bankruptcy. Let me ask this question real quick. Has that something that you've ever faced real quick from a financial standpoint, a setback to the point of bankruptcy, losing everything? No?
No.
Gotcha. Okay. But for the people who have, let's kind of start with that. Starting over again after divorce, after the career's over, limited funds. Any advice on a starting point, I guess, where they should start?
Yeah, I've been asked that question over the years. You know, somebody will come up to me and say, you know, kind of take me aside and say, you know, I'm kind of embarrassed. Like I went bankrupt, so nobody's going to lend me money. And I said right away, okay, you have to change your thinking. So let me give you an idea of how people think when it comes to making money. So flipping houses is something that people seem to know about. There's TV shows and whatnot, but you can use that as an analogy for literally anything that you have a passion for. It could be cars. It could be for not just women, but it could be makeup. It could be anything. So I don't know much about cars. I like to buy my cars new. I don't know how to fix them. I don't like the old cars. I don't want to have any hassles. But a lot of people flip cars. So let's say you're good at cars. Okay, Robert's good at cars, and you go look at 100 cars. You know the price of literally everything by looking at it and seeing the mileage. You can tell because you become an expert. Just like when I looked at properties, I looked at 100 at least before I bought my first one. So I became an expert. So Robert, if you came across a car, a 1972 Chevelle, and it's worth $20,000, it's in good shape. But somebody's selling it because it's been sitting in the barn for 10 years and somebody passed away in the family and the kids got it and they just want money. and you find out this car is available, and you say, what would you like for that car? And, the kids, the family say, well, we'd be happy with $10,000 if you can get it to me quick.
Mm-hmm.
But it's worth $20,000. So let's say you went bankrupt the day before, and you come to me and say, Darren, I've got a car. I've looked at hundreds. I've been involved in this business for either a couple months or a couple years. I'm looking for an investor that would want to buy that car and split the profits. How many people would say, oh, I don't want to do that. You went bankrupt last week.
Right.
I don't care. You got a good deal. So good deals are always going to find the money. So what I'm trying to share with people is just, again, to have the confidence is I don't care about the past. Now, if you stole money, embezzled money, things like that, I'm going to care.
True.
But, if you had a challenge and you had to go to rehab for a while or you lost your job or whatever, I don't care. I really don't. Okay, this is a good deal. Prove it to me. I'll do business with you time and time again.
And I would submit that person becomes a bit more trustworthy because they have been at the bottom and are working their way on getting back up top, right?
Plus, their background as a warrior.
That too.
That's such an advantage. Mm-hmm. So Robert wrote a book. He wrote many, but one of them was called Unfair Advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, if I have enough time, everybody has an unfair advantage when it comes to finances, even if you don't have any money, even if you went bankrupt yesterday. Are you good at maintenance or fixing things up, for instance?
Yes.
Okay. So would you like to own property with no money?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something else they didn't teach me in school. How about you and I get into a partnership and you do the maintenance for my 10 houses, and the next one I buy, I'll give you 10% of it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like do some kind of a fair exchange,
mm-hmm.
And you're working for free. I'm not going to ask you to work 40 hours a week. It might take you 5-6 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're in the environment of somebody that did it. You're doing something that's fair because I got to hire somebody to do it anyway. And now you can actually own something, for instance, or be creative. Whatever the exchange is, it's because you're good at it. That's your advantage. And you worked for free. You work to earn.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there's really no excuse for people once you start to put your mind to it. Work on some skills. But if you're a handyman, so many people would love to have you on their team.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a great network or you have a sales ability, those people are good at raising capital. The gift of gab, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Some people aren't good at that. Some people are better at different areas. And a business is many pieces. So you need many pieces to come together potentially, and everybody can win.
So start off with a partnership of some sort.
Yeah, you could. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's endless,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't need money.
Right.
And a lot of guys here, we go to sober living, we have time.
And I guess that kind of answers my question here as far as the money mistakes that you see people making today. I guess the first one would be thinking that you have to have money to get involved in that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really don't. Something Robert taught Josh, Lisa, myself is, this is something that blew my mind. Only lazy people use their own money.
Mm-hmm. Only lazy people use their own money.
So if I want to buy that Chevelle, it's worth 20, I can buy it for 10, don't have any money because you're lazy.
Mm-hmm.
You need to come up with a pitch. You need to obviously ask people. You have to ask people that have money. So if you're not in that stratosphere where somebody has 20,000, who are you hanging out with?
Yeah.
Okay? If you tell me a pitch and you're terrible and you ask 10 people, you get $0, that's feedback.
You need to
You
work
gotta
on
work
the
on
pitch.
that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If you buy the car and you realize, okay, it's not worth 20, it's only worth 11, that's feedback. You need to do more research because your partner trusted you. You're the expert,
Mm-hmm. And that confidence in yourself is something that you have to work on restoring, which many of us face in this realm.
Sure.
When we're going through that failure and rebuilding our lives, that little voice mastery becomes key. So it's a bit of a step process. Yep. But at the same time, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right?
Absolutely.
You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Exactly.
All the quotes, all the cliches, et cetera, but there's a lot of truth to it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst they could say? No.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you got to believe in yourself first. Yep. I would, in my estimation, anyway.
Yep.
What financial myths do you? I guess that kind of feeds into the financial myths that people need to stop believing about themselves. That they have to have their own money, that they have to have a lot of it, right?
Okay. Now, personally, I think you should have your financial house in order. So
true, as far as investing in. Yeah.
No, I just mean just a simple budget. So let's go to the very, very basics. And I this was one of the rapid fire questions you talked about. So when I went to university, of course, I took finance classes, and one of them was Finance 101. And it was a whole book of different formulas, the businesses measure and return on investments and all these formulas. I don't use any of them, literally any of them. When Robert Kiyosaki's book was given to me, Rich Dad Poor Dad, I finally figured out what the definition of being rich is. Now, when I first graduated, I had a financial planner. I'm 23, Financial planner give me this 45-page proposal, or I guess proposal. This is what you're going to do to retire when you're 57 years old. So we're looking 35 years down the road. It's got all these assumptions of how much you're going to make, what's inflation, what are the interest rates. It's like, I need $4 million. So what do you think my mind said when I read this? I need $4 million. It's like, not going to happen.
Can't do it.
My little voice said, not a chance.
Right.
So here's the formula that Robert taught me, and this is in the cash flow game. This is the way you win the game. Your passive income is more than your expenses. So let's keep it really basic. Let's say your expenses, you got rent, you got a car, food, entertainment, $3,000. Real basic. When you have $3,001 coming in passively, could be a rental property, could be a laundromat, could be online business. When that money comes in and you're making money when you sleep, when that money is $3,001, but you only spend $3,000, you're rich. You never have to worry about money anymore. So when I learned that formula, I was like, oh, that's more doable. It's not $4 million. So how do we get there? Well, first of all, again, you can't spend more money than you make every month.
Right.
So just some basic budgeting. And one thing I would suggest for people that are starting is just to start to have some discipline is, I don't care what the number is, $5 a month, $1 a day. Put it on your night table before you go to bed. Okay. Get $100 or whatever the number is. Go open up a bank account. Now, I said I don't like banks, but for this purpose, they're good. Just open up a dedicated savings account. It could be for your first investment, for instance. And when you have $1,000, maybe, then you can start to invest. But by the time you get $1,000, you're looking at different deals. You're reading books. These days, you can go on the internet and learn so much information. But you're getting that habit of putting money aside for investments. And if it takes a year before you can invest, fine. In the first year, you've looked at 50 different deals. And you purposely don't invest because you need education. So what I see, the biggest scam is people look at a deal and the person offering the deal talks really well. They might wear a nice suit. They look good. But the whole thing is a sham. But the person that is investing is uneducated. It's the first deal they've seen. It's the shiny object. Oh, it must be good. The guy sounded really good. But it turns out to be really, really bad. So start that savings account. Don't spend more than you make. In the meantime, when that savings account is growing for your first investment, you're reading books, meeting people, working for free, all the basic things we've talked about this morning. Make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Building a good, strong foundation, getting your house in order first and foremost, and then doing the research, doing the work, training up, right?
Sure.
We'll put it in that kind of terminology for a lot of our warriors. You're training up for your first mission, for your first deployment, right?
Perfect.
You got to get everything in order, which takes discipline.
Sure.
Right. One of the pitfalls that a lot of cops fall into are those extra duty security jobs, right? The gravy, right? I'm working my 40-hour week, but I can get paid twice as much working this extra job for a few hours.
Yep.
And what do the old timers tell you? Don't make that part of your budget.
Right.
Put that money to the side, because before you know it, you're dependent on it.
Yep.
And then you can't quit working those extra jobs because your bills are based on that. It's where a lot of cops get into trouble. It's where I specifically got into trouble, among many other areas. But having that discipline to put in the long haul effort, right? To be able to put that money aside for a year, because we want it quick. I want it quick.
Sure.
I want the return on the investment quick, but being able to put it aside for a year. Right. But when you think of it in the longer scheme of things, right? How many of us waste more time by trying to get rich quick or invest here and there, or trying to get ahead quick? We end up wasting more time than if we just put in the work like you're outlining here.
Yeah, because I mean, I've lost money before. I got in a couple Ponzi schemes and things like this when I was much, much younger. And, it typically happens. But what I'm suggesting is don't let it happen to you. Get education. And that $1,000, when you invest it, if you make a 10% return, that's $100. Now you've got $100 of passive income. And remember, your number was 3,000. So you're getting there. And don't spend it. Reinvest that. And with compound interest, your money will grow. The velocity of your money is actually going to grow pretty quick. So when you see that first dollar of passive income, it's like a big celebration because most people have zero. They just do. It's just a fact. It's not a bad thing. It's just we don't know. But once you start to see that go from 100 and then it's 200 and then it's 400, then you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Where I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel when I was 23 and I had to have $4 million. There's no way. It wasn't possible. So just focus on that $1 of passive income and calculate your ratio based on keep your numbers reasonable. And you can see the ratio grow each year.
Are there any other tips that you're really fond of when it comes to long-term financial success? Any other habits that you really like?
There's many. The biggest one, and again, I invest differently than a lot of people may on the podcast. When I was younger, I invested in mutual funds and some stocks I did invest in. Now, I say this, I'm not looking for any new friends when it comes to investing. So why did I invest here? Because I knew the owners and their track record. Again, this isn't normal what you should do, but when I invested here, I didn't ask any questions because I knew the integrity of the owners, the founders behind it. So now I have my money concentrated with very few people that I've known for 20, 25, 30 years. It took time. Before this, I, again, made some mistakes. But when you find those true gems that are people with integrity and if they say something, they're going to do it. That's the kind of people I like to invest in their businesses.
I do want to ask this is kind of a sidetrack here, but how you came to know the Lannons.
We met, I believe it was 2002, and Robert Kiyosaki, as I'd mentioned, he would do seminars every 6 months or so. So we met there and we studied a book called The Dollar Crisis. It was a book that Robert said, okay, if you want to come here and spend your $5,000, read this book before you get here, come prepared. And that's the first time I recall meeting them. And then we all just grew as Rich Dad students. And eventually Robert asked us to be on his team of advisors. Yeah. And then, because I had a seminar business and the other advisors, typically most of them didn't, I would ask the advisors to come to Canada or do events all over the world. And Josh and Lisa always showed up. Haley also came to one I did in Mexico recently. Yeah. So they're always showing up because they want to give back and educate people financially.
That's a resource I really need to take advantage of while I'm here.
Definitely, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you answering that question there because I was kind of curious about the background. I knew you were affiliated with them, and Rich Dad Poor Dad, Blair Singer, Robert Kiyosaki. These are names that I've heard a lot since I've been here as an employee, and it's my own fault for not taking a deeper dive into it. But I'm learning as I go. I got to get my foundation set up.
Sure.
As I continue to grow and to recover, those things will come. But I'm still in the rebuilding phase, with my finances, bankruptcy, divorce, all the things. Finally have a better credit rating, with a little bit of hard work. So let me ask that real quick as we continue along here. Many of us are facing that. I had a little bit of help along the way from some important people in my life as far as reestablishing credit with the secured credit cards, the small credit cards and stuff like that, taking out loans, carrying a balance. Would you have any advice for vets, first responders that are starting over again as far as the credit is concerned?
That's not really my world.
And I thought you might say that because of your stance on banks. So let's talk about that.
But it's not really my stance on banks. Yes, I have a credit card.
Sure.
And obviously you don't want to have interest. And that's 100% discipline. Okay, maybe there's the odd time something could happen in your life where you need it, but you should never, ever pay interest because it's like 30%.
Yeah.
So that's just not wise. So that means you need to have more discipline and spend less money. Okay.
Many people think that we need credit to be able to do stuff.
Yeah. So when I need money, I ask other people. No. So a credit card is for convenience. I'm traveling and rent a car, hotel, but I don't need it for my passive income to grow. If I want my passive income to grow and I need money, the banks are going to say no. Let's all agree. So I use other people's money.
Mm-hmm.
I just convince other people to do deals with me. And to do that, it has to be in the back of your mind, in your heart, always they have to get paid back. Always, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to raise money for other people, realize you have to pay them back and some of your profits. If you have a business, it's much better to increase your sales so you don't have to borrow other people's money. So there's a couple ways to do it if you have a business. But as far as just getting back to your basic question, I don't know that world very well. Because for all these years, if I need money, I just use other people's money. But with my credit card, I've always been disciplined to say, okay, that just is not financially a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to spend more than you earn. Period. Like cutting out credit cards don't work. You have to stop. You have to have discipline. Don't be in denial. Do not spend more than you make. Period.
Discipline is something that we're all used to. Right?
Sure, of course.
Applying it can be tricky.
Class, yeah.
It can be tricky sometimes applying it, but you learn a lot of valuable lessons along the way, what you can and can't live without. And for me, I tell this story quite often. We had the house, we had vehicles, we had the American dream, if you will. And then at some point I was drowning, trying to keep up with all that. And when those things were starting to go away, the cell phones were getting cut off, the internet was getting cut off, the cable was getting cut off because I couldn't pay the bills after the loss of the career. I thought everybody was just going to walk away from me, but we came closer together as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And then having been through all that and look back on it, it's not going to kill us. It'll make us better. We find out what we can and can't live without. And when life is less full and less complicated, there's a lot of freedom to that, a whole lot of freedom. Not just financial freedom, just personal freedom, being able to move about without having all this stuff weighing you down.
Sure.
Right? But from the financial aspect of reestablishing that, some of us, we got to reestablish credit. We have to slowly build, aside from the business world, just to maintain personal finances. Yeah. But the discipline is what comes in clutch, if you will, for making sure we don't spend too much, which is something that a lot of us had a bad habit of. I know I did.
And what I've seen in my life also, in fact, one time I had an oral surgeon, a dentist, oral surgeon come to my event. And this is back when I only had like 30 people at my events. He was in Calgary and he brought his son. And I said, just curious, because one of my investors is an oral surgeon. His name was Dr. Long in Edmonton. And he makes a couple $1 million a year. So I just said, out of curiosity, why would you come to a seminar like this? 2-day seminar playing a game. He goes, well, I wanted my son to come. But he says, I have so many colleagues that are in so much debt that they can never quit their practice. So what happens is in our society, the more money people actually make, the worse for them, because those people the bank does give credit to. They'll give you credit cards and lines of credit because you have this high income. So they're the ones, kind of like you're on that path, and you get in more and more bad debt because you have the higher incomes. And so it's a curse in some ways.
Yeah, you end up enslaved to the banks and the creditors, which is not something that anybody wants.
So think of this. If you're an oral surgeon, you're making $25,000 a month. That's your burn rate. Or my example earlier, $3,000. Okay, keep things low. Who's going to get out of the rat race first? In other words, who's going to have more passive income than their expenses first? And 99 times out of 100, it's the low income earners.
Mm-hmm.
That's the people that become rich. Remember, rich means more passive income than expenses. So once I cross that threshold where my passive income, every month I'm sleeping, more money comes in than I spend, guess what I have now? All the time in the world.
Yeah.
And now I can hang out with people that are smarter than me and make more money than me and do deals with people. So where I live in Mexico, for instance, pretty nice neighborhood. Nobody talks about their jobs because we didn't have a job. We're all business owners. And now the deals get bigger because we all have time. So what's time worth?
Yeah.
Kids, whatever. Or you can grow your business bigger if you want. So once you get over that passive income where you never have to worry about money, because here's the thing, and I was thinking about this last night when I woke up, because I was excited to be here. People are addicted to money.
Yeah.
There's many addictions, but the addiction to money, before you get your paycheck, it's already gone. We're addicted to it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of personal freedom when you don't have it anymore. You see people that are homeless on the street and you wonder how they could live that way, but they're, in a lot of ways, they're a lot freer than a lot of other people.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. And this is just me, thinking back on my history.
Sure.
Because I had a good job, but I wasn't happy.
Mm-hmm.
Money doesn't bring happiness. I've run search warrants on houses that were $1 million homes where people had lots of money, lots of things, and obviously they were miserable.
Right.
Because the cops were there, being involved in some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So money does not bring happiness, Then the addiction to money can drive people crazy just as much as addiction to anything else.
Sure.
So the financial freedom that we're talking about, personal freedom, real freedom, doesn't involve money. It involves the passive income that when you don't have to worry about the money anymore, even if that's a little bit, right?
Exactly. You're free. You're free. You're free. If I don't have to worry about money, I don't have to go to work. I don't care what the amount is. It depends on what you're happy with.
And you put it in such simple terms, and I like that from the low money standpoint, from the $3,000 standpoint, as long as you're making $3,001.
Exactly.
Right? Many of us think when it comes to that passive income that it's a lot of money, but it doesn't have to be a lot of money.
And again, I've done this for 25 years now. I've traveled the world. Most people don't make millions of dollars, but you don't have to. Again, do what makes you happy. I don't work too much anymore. I'm not really interested in having more money. I'm pretty happy. Of course, I want some more, but I'm happy.
Yeah.
That's the key. I'm happy. I can travel. I don't have a lot of stress.
And that's worth so much more.
Yeah.
I may drive a 20-year-old truck, but I'm happy because I'm not making a $1,200 truck note.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk about future planning, retirement future planning as we start heading towards the conclusion of this. What should first responders and veterans be thinking of when it comes to retirement right now?
Well, again, for me, retirement's not a concept that has ever entered my mind after I read the book because it goes back to that formula we just talked about. So once my passive income is greater than my expenses, I'm retired. It's done. I never have to worry about money again. Make sense?
It does, but when we think about that, the money coming in, we got to do something to keep the money coming in, and many of us, it's working a job.
No. Okay. So you're going to work the job and make your money. You're going to spend money on food and house and entertainment and kids and everything. But the extra money you invest. So when you're investing, that is now passive. So once your money is invested, it's always going to stay there in its investment and just give you a return. So I don't sell the golden goose, right? So you're going to take your money, invest it over time. Your passive income grows. Once it's more than your expenses, you're financially free. And that money is just going to stay there. Now, I've got some formulas where I want to make sure that my passive income continues to grow every year by 20%. That's my goal. So I then also can spend 20% more, but I don't. I spend 10% more. So my golden goose is always growing. My kids are happy. Okay, so if I pass away, there's some money sitting there. But every year, I'm going to spend more money. And it sounds crazy, but it gets difficult. What do you spend it on? So always when you're doing your investments, keep in mind that that's not going to go anywhere if they're good investments. And the return it's going to give you is going to allow you to live with no stress.
And many of us in these worlds, think of our retirement as I work for the sheriff's office, money is going into the pension fund. And if I work 33 years instead of 30 years, I'll get the money back on the drop because of what's going on in over the cap, et cetera. And that's my nest egg. That's my golden goose, if you will. But we don't think any further past that. That was my plan. It really was.
Right. And that is passive income. That's a good formula. And then if you have extra money, you can put it into different investments to grow it even more.
But what happens if that doesn't come to fruition? Like in my case, I'm terminated 16 and a half years into a career, and I've been drawing that small disability pension since then, right? So that's all I got left. So how early should I have started to invest in the sense that you're talking about in that career? And is it ever too late to start investing?
Well, I think, again, once you have education, you should start to do some small investments because you're going to learn and figure that out. But I always go back and ask a lot of people questions because I can't really give blanket answers unless I know more about the person. So it would be, okay, what has meaning to you? I want to send my kids to the best university, for instance. There's many parents that would work 3 jobs to send their kids to great schools. Okay, so if that has meaning to you, let's put that aside, and we need to plan things based on what has meaning to you, and then you can create your financial plan based on that. What has meaning to you? I want a second home in San Diego, or I want a muscle car at this age. So you got to put all these things into your formula and then go backwards and say, how do I get those things? And then put together a plan. But it really is more important to, what do you want? What are your goals?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't necessarily go to a financial planner and they spit out this report. Well, that has no meaning to me. So really what's more important to you, and that's how I would plan somebody's investment portfolio, I guess.
Makes sense. You know, and especially if it's something that we're passionate about, we're going to be a lot more interested and a lot more involved in it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, okay, for maybe yourself as an example or some warriors, if you've had some challenges, some hiccups, you know, you need to start fresh, then that's where I would suggest, you know, start a business.
Mm-hmm.
But most businesses fail in the first 5 years, and that's just a fact. So again, take advantage of working for free 5, 10, 15 hours a week for an entrepreneur to learn, and then you can transition that into a business. But businesses are great ways to create income, and a service business maybe, you know, pressure washing, maintenance on people's homes if you're good at that stuff, landscaping. Sometimes there's cash involved, which is always nice. So those kind of businesses are good to start and to, you know, start building your network, confidence, and credibility.
Yeah. One thing that always pops up, because, you know, I investigated financial crimes for a while, and it's an important lesson in business, of course, is not blending your money with somebody else's money when it comes to the investments. You know, if somebody invests $10,000 in that Chevelle, that money needs to go into restoring that Chevelle and getting it ready to sell, as opposed to, well, I got to use that money to make my rent this month. I'll pay it back eventually.
100%. Yeah. I'm glad you said that. It's something that's super, super important is you can never, ever commingle. Mm-hmm. You can never use somebody else's money for your own purposes. I'll pay it back next week. That's how you get in. It's a slippery slope. So yeah, people, they're going to continue to invest with you if you give them the money back and you have integrity. So people's blood, sweat, and tears go into that money. You need to hold it sacred.
In Louisiana, it often happened with contractors, called a contractor misappropriation of funds, and it was under the theft statute. You know, you pay me $50,000 for material and labor to get started on your house project, and that money goes into the house I'm already working on, and then the next house I agree to do is going to fund your house.
Eventually that fall, you know, what they say, like
apart.
the card of house or the house of cards.
House of cards, yes.
Eventually. Yeah. So yeah, definitely keep things on the straight and narrow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I raised money in Canada, we raised hundreds of millions of dollars. I've never been fined or suspended, which is something obviously very, very important in this game. And if you do it right, you can have a very long career. If you do it wrong once, you're on the internet forever.
Oh, yeah. And nobody will trust you.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's where the discipline comes in. That's where the education comes in and the foundation. You know, get your finances in order, get your house set up the way that you need it to take care of your bills and to have a little bit of passive income, and then start working with your investors to get your idea off the ground.
Perfect. I agree.
Let's high-speed chicken feed, for example. Are you ready to invest?
Yeah.
Nice. We got it on.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, but tell me the pitch.
We'll get back to that.
Okay.
We're on the Warriors Heart podcast right now.
The Warriors Heart podcast, not the high-speed chicken feed? Okay, we'll get back to business at hand here. Again, we're commingling stuff.
No, good point.
So let's pick apart the rapid-fire questions we did for just a minute. The best financial book you ever read, you said, was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Why should we add that to our list?
Well, to me, it's like the Bible of finances, and it's the #1 best-selling book in history when it comes to personal finances. And Robert takes what many people would think are complicated subjects, and some people today watching might say, okay, I didn't understand all that, and that's normal. But he takes things that are complicated, makes them very simple to understand in a story format. So that's why I like the book so much.
I like that, because I can get lost in the technical jargon.
There's none.
There is none.
Super, super simple book to read.
Okay.
Yeah.
That book may have to go to the top of the list.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Because this is, I mean, in serious business, this is something that, you know, I'll be 48 years old. Keep your jokes to yourself. In August.
Okay.
And all I have left is my disability. Aside from whatever it is that I'm going to put up in between now and then. And do I get a little panicky about that? Absolutely. Do I think it's too late to build enough wealth to live comfortably? Yeah, I do.
Really?
You know,
It's your little voice.
That's the little voice.
You're only 48.
I'm only 48. But you think about it in the longer scheme of things, I guess. What's the average life expectancy these days for, you know, average white male? You know,
75?
Something like that.
Or 80? No, 83.
Something.
You got a long way to go.
I got a long way to go.
So it's that little voice. Okay, Warriors Heart, when it first started 10 years ago, how many employees were here?
Not that many, maybe 10, 15,
And
something
now
like
there's
that. Over
couple
200,
hundred, right?
240,
That's in 10 years.
I think. Yeah.
So again, once you get some momentum and some education. Okay, I had 12 properties in 2001. In 2010, I had 5,000. Did I ever think that was possible? Not a chance. 100 I thought was not possible. But things change when you start to have interest in these types of subjects, start hanging around other people, and it has meaning to you. You'll be surprised how quickly you can grow and how you can accomplish your goals and blow past them. I still have my goals written down from 2001, 2002, 2003. I look back thinking, did I ever think small? And it's financial education that allowed me to understand how to get past those goals. Truly is.
Yeah.
You're only 48.
I'm only 48.
Right? You've got a great personality. You've got a great background. Police, immediate trust. So what business would you want to start, for instance, or real estate? And if you need money as a loan, all you need to do is ask. So I'll say this sometimes in my seminars. How many people would like to have $10,000, $1 million? All the hands go up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How many business owners in the room, I'll say as an example too. How many would like $1 million to expand your business? Again, all the hands go up. Now, I'm going to do another exercise. Please be honest. How many people have you asked to loan you that money in the last month? Show me with your hands. And it's always zero.
Zero.
Always.
Confidence.
People don't ask.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. If you do ask, and this is super, super important for me, I mentioned I'm not looking for new friends when it comes to investing, but I still invest in some entrepreneurs that are small and have got good stories and whatnot. It's just part of giving back. I would rather invest with a warrior here with a good heart, good track record, has been on the program for a while and can prove to me that they're on the straight and narrow. I'd rather invest and keep my money in a small town like Bandera, for instance, than give my money to Wall Street, like any day of the week, without even a doubt. I'd just rather do that because I feel better about the investment. They've got a good mission. They're good people. And from an investor as well, if things go well, you can make a lot more money than you would on Wall Street.
Yeah.
So I just love helping people. But a lot of people need to think bigger. And especially the warriors with this great background. That's that unfair advantage. You've already got it.
Mm-hmm.
So think bigger.
That definitely encapsulates that part of the question, the biggest financial lessons that you've learned. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And we mentioned earlier stocks or real estate.
Okay, so I bought mutual funds when I was in grade 6.
Mm-hmm.
And back then you would get mail in grade 6, you get mail. It's a pretty big thing in your house.
Yeah.
So I got a piece of mail. And I started to notice after 2 years, the price would go down, but I noticed the fees, and the fees were bigger than any amounts I would make.
Mm-hmm.
So after a couple of years, I sold them. Okay, so that was my lesson in grade 6. Now, my business started to grow, 2006, 2007. I've got extra money. I was putting some money into the stock market. And in 2008, when the recession happened, I lost all the money. So like $250,000. I've never invested in the stock market since.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you can't make money in it. I'm just saying I don't like it. I don't like to own things where I don't control or have ownership in it, where I can make decisions. So for me, I'm not a stock market guy, but I'm not saying it's good or bad or anything. I just don't do it.
Well,
It's not my
stick to what you
formula.
know and
Yeah.
stick to what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good advice in that.
Yeah.
People invest in businesses or stocks or whatever because they believe in that company or they think they can get rich off of it. There's one person that I've listened to before that invests in war stocks. Whatever
Sure.
Nancy Pelosi's husband is buying at the moment, that's what he buys.
Smart.
Yeah. And he seems to make some money
Mm-hmm.
from it. I don't know. Best investment you've ever made? What was your answer to that?
Just personal development.
Personal development.
All the courses I've spent money on with Robert, for instance, and other people, all over the world have taken personal development courses. And that's always the best investment is education yourself.
Constantly improving yourself.
Sure.
And going back to our careers, every time I go to the range,
Mm-hmm.
every time I go to the gym, or learn a new skill for the job, that is personal development. But when we think of personal development, we think of, going to a class and learning something for a week or, whatever. Personal development can take on many forms. It can take on reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, learning the game cash flow, putting those principles into practice. AA is personal development.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
That's something that the founders of Warriors Heart are really big on, personal development. And when we do personal development here as employees, but we also are encouraged to do it in our personal lives without it being a part of work. I went to Warrior Path a couple of years ago. Fantastic, phenomenal. Absolutely loved it and grew from it exponentially in my personal life. So, and when it came time for me to take off work, absolutely go. You know,
Right.
get it done because they believe in that, because it's going to make a better employee from their side of the fence. But from just personally, if we're not growing, if we're not learning, what are we doing? We're stagnant. We're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
And do you think there's a correlation between the growth here, they've got 2 locations now, and the founders' belief in personal development?
I'm beginning to catch on. I think there's a
Right.
little wisdom to it. Maybe
Right.
these folks know what they're doing.
Right. Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to have it down pretty well. What's the worst investment you've ever made? What was your answer to that one?
I don't remember the answer. I won't say the 2 divorces. Maybe maybe no prenup, but no. I guess, again, it happens to virtually everybody, but for people listening, I hope it doesn't happen to you. I put money into a couple of things where I lost all my money because I wasn't educated. You know,
Right.
it sounded good, and I didn't know any better. Again, the guy was just really good at selling. I thought, okay, I'm going to make some good money, and I lost it all.
Yeah.
Ponzi scheme.
So it wasn't a specific idea. It was just you didn't do your homework. You didn't do
Right.
your approach. So that made it a bad investment.
I didn't do my homework. There was no contract. He shouldn't have been raising money anyway. He wasn't regulated. There's so many things, but this is like 25, 30 years ago.
Let me divert off for just a quick second when it comes to contract, because the first thing that pops into my mind when we're talking about investors and business and everything else is contracts, is paperwork, is lawyers.
Sure.
It's guaranteeing, that you're going to get a return on your investment. Is that a huge part of what we're talking about here when you're starting a business? Do you have to have some sort of legal background or have somebody on board with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the prudent thing for me to also say, and I'm glad you brought it up. But obviously, whenever you raise money, you have to make sure you do things within the law. Every country, every state is different. Okay, I'm Canadian. I've raised money in Canada, Mexico, United States, and you have to always follow the law. Now, when I was doing small deals with my friends and family, it was a written one-pager.
Mm-hmm.
But technically, I'm going to say this, you should always get legal advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and make sure things are papered properly.
My legal advice is always, it's only illegal if you get caught. But that's
No, it's not good advice.
not good advice at all.
No.
But to be prudent, yeah,
Exactly.
You would want to have some sort of legal backing. And one thing every warrior should know about money, or I guess anybody watching this should know about money. What would be that one thing?
That people should know about money? I would say that it's abundant.
Mm-hmm.
It's super, super abundant. I would say that for every person like myself that asks people for money, there's 1,000 people that have money.
Yeah.
There really is. There's so much money out there looking for a good home. All you need to do is provide them with a good project, show them how they can make a good return. And I will also say this, if I invested in one of your projects, for instance, and you worked extremely hard, you did everything everything possible that you said you were going to do, and we still lost money, I would have zero hard feelings.
Yeah.
Not one. And it's the people that steal your money you have hard feelings on, for instance. But if I see somebody put all the effort possible into it, I say congratulations. We tried. Business also has some risk. And whenever I have people invest with me, you have to also show both sides of the coin. Okay, here's the good, shiny side, how much money we can make. But people are not stupid. You need to also say there's risk. They all know it. So why not at least share that information with the people so they can make an educated decision on their own? But you've got to show both sides. Don't always make sure it's all shiny and glossy and you're never going to lose money. You always show both sides.
No, it makes sense because we want to be educated. I kind of take that approach when I'm talking about treatment here at Warriors Heart, where somebody's interested in coming in. Yeah, here's all the great stuff that you're going to encounter. Here's the gym, here's the pool, here's equine therapy and art.
Yeah.
But here's the stuff that's going to piss you off. Here's the stuff that you're going to have a hard time with.
Right.
Here's the stuff that's going to be a particular challenge to you. But all these things are in there for a reason.
Right.
It's a matter of perspective.
Yeah. So give both sides.
Exactly. So that way their eyes are wide open so that when that happens, they're not, when those bad things happen, I remember he talked about this. I don't have to run from it. Let me stick it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
one habit that can change somebody's life, financial habit that can change somebody's life.
Well, for me, the biggest one, as I mentioned earlier, is just that having that dedicated savings account that is going to be invested after you're educated. Okay. So again, let's say it takes 12 months, could be $500, could be $1,000, whatever the number is. In the meantime, I want you to go look at deals. Okay. So it's called deal flow. So go look at people that are trying to get you to invest, and you're going to say in your mind and have discipline, I'm not going to invest for 1 year because I want to look at 10 deals or 20 deals. And every time you look at a deal, you're going to learn things. You're going to learn questions to ask. You might hear other people's questions they ask. You educate yourself. So that way, when you do finally invest some money in something, you've got that education behind you and you're wiser, which reduces your risk. Ignorance increases your risk. Education decreases your risk.
No, makes sense. And it's an easy thing to do, and we can apply it to a lot of things in life. Again, most of us, want to be where we were 10 years ago on day one of our recovery, but it takes a little while to get there. But in that time, we can do our research. Just the truck that I have now. I wanted to buy a new truck for well over a year. Did I save money during that time? No, I really didn't. I didn't really save up money for a down payment, but I educated myself on exactly what I wanted. The pitfalls with this particular model, the mechanical difficulties, et cetera. This one, has engine issues, transmission issues, whatever. I educated myself for quite a while on that, and I was very confident when I finally did make that purchase that I was getting a good truck and a good deal. Yep. Same thing applies when it comes to business. Educate yourself on the industry that you're investing in, the person that you're investing with, et cetera, while you're saving that money.
So let me ask you a question about the truck. How much did the truck cost?
$29,000.
Okay. And that was obviously some of your money and maybe financing.
None of my money, financing.
Okay.
That was the downside.
100%.
100%.
Okay.
Nothing down. That was the downside.
So if you would have asked an investor to perhaps help you with that truck, would that have made your life a little less stressful if now they're partners with you?
Probably, because I would have, in a way it would have, I say in a way, because the note would have been lower per month and I would have been able to afford more. My mind thinks, well, I can pay my normal bills, but the savings should have went back to that investor.
Exactly. Because
I'm tracking.
The finance company is making money on the interest. I'm not sure the rate, but they're making money there, plus probably on the vehicle, probably. So what I say to my investors is I'd rather give you the money than the banks.
Yeah.
And to make sure that you win, I'm going to make sure you get paid back first before I profit. So again, it makes you work a little harder because you're going to make sure they get the money back. But once you set it up for the investor to win and they see this is fair, you're going to have a lot of money come to you. Whereas the banks always win first. And that's why I've had so much success raising money is once you educate people where their investments are now typically are not going to work, mutual funds, ETFs, Wall Street, and you show them how they always win the banks first. And when you can reverse that, the money flows very quickly to you. So I guess, again, it might be deep for some people. My point is just start thinking a little bit differently that there's lots of money out there and people would love to invest in a good person, in a good truck, in a good business. Just give them a good, reasonable return and you'll have a lot of money come your way if that's what you're looking for.
Well, when you have nothing to work with, you really have to think outside the box.
Exactly.
To a large degree. Right?
And the Warriors are creative.
Indeed.
Right?
We can look back on some of our habits and some of the things that got us all the way to the front gates of rehab and think, I was pretty creative.
Exactly. Yeah, there's that, and there's creativity in the job too. So there's lots of creativity in these people. So just change the focus.
Yeah, I like that. And then it brings about freedom. And we talked about what freedom means. Right. And again, encapsulate what you think of when it comes to financial freedom.
Well, for me, it's just having the time freedom and nobody telling me where to go or what to do. I would not be a good employee anymore. I've got so much freedom. I just love the time freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do it. This is the earliest I got up in a long time to come to this podcast, which I'm grateful for, but I'm not a morning guy, so I'm not going to do good at a job. I'm just not good at that. So just time freedom and not having somebody tell me what to do.
And that's what all of us really want, is the freedom, to be able to take a breath. And I know this is somewhat off subject, but in the same way it kind of is, I'll kind of expand a little bit on that. I had mentioned I was suffocating, with trying to keep up with the Joneses, if you will, the house note and everything else, especially after I lost my career. The reason we surrendered the house to the bankruptcy court, alcoholics and addicts, we can't manage money for shit. So we were in a bankruptcy. And I talked the ex-wife into surrendering the house to the bankruptcy court because I was drowning. There was no way I could make the bankruptcy note. And there was a lot of freedom that came from that, being able to take a breath, a little bit of fresh air in your lungs. Did it suck losing the house? Absolutely. I talk to guys all the time, that, had maintained their house. When they finally sold it, they made a huge profit on it. Does it suck that I missed out on that? Absolutely, it sucks. But at the same time, when you need to catch a breath and take a step back, it's not the end of the world. There's a lot of freedom involved in that. Now, the freedom that you're talking about right now, we'll get to, but the freedom that I experienced just from not having to worry about that, was it a huge setback? Yes. And then as I began to rebuild my life, a little bit of stuff came in here and there, and I got quite happy with it, not having a whole lot.
Sure.
Because when you don't have a whole lot, there's not that much to worry about because we have a tendency to worry about every damn thing. So you're in your own little bubble. You get a little bit comfortable, and a lot of us want to stay there. But if we're going to grow, we got to get outside that comfort zone, and we got to take risk. We got to invest a little in ourselves and in our finances.
And there's definitely a lot of bankruptcies in the world, for sure. But bankruptcy is a tool, and as a Canadian, it's probably because the American dream is so strong, it's a tool to create people to take risks. It's a tool there that's on purpose. So again, I've gone bankrupt, but you just said it gives you that freedom. So don't look at it as a stigma that's a negative necessarily. Learn from it, but it's there on purpose to help entrepreneurs that tried something that didn't work. So, it's almost like, hey, get back on the horse. Let's go. There's so much money to be made out there. There's so many different ways to make money, and with technology, quicker than ever. So again, everybody's got these road bumps along the way. And if you had one recently, just kind of like, okay, wash it, get over it. We'll start again.
Learn from it, apply the lessons that you've learned, and take a different approach next time. But most importantly, don't be afraid to try.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's where a lot of us get caught up. Fear rules us in recovery. Sometimes we talk about it all the times in the rooms of AA. Well, how do you conquer that fear? Sometimes it's exposure therapy. Getting next to whatever it is that scares you the most. Same thing with relationships, with house, car, everything else, that financial, you got to take a leap of faith. And I've taken several over the years. The finance is going to be another huge aspect of that. And just about every recovery program, Warriors Heart included, Warrior Path harped on it a lot. I say harped on it. They focused on it a lot. The wellness triangle, mind, body, spirit, but also in there was finances, wealth, managing your finances correctly, because that brings about a lot of freedom. And you're at that point. I'm jealous of that. But I want to learn from that also. So I'm going to take a lot of the advice that you've given here today and start really taking a different approach to it.
Oh, super. I'm glad to help.
You've written some books?
I wrote a book called The Art of Raising Capital. And for a number of years, I didn't write the book. And Robert Kiyosaki kept saying, write the book, write the book. And my business was growing so much in Canada, I really didn't, this sounds crazy, I didn't need more customers. So to me, a book is a really nice business card. I haven't sold millions of copies and whatnot, but it's good for credibility. But it was many, many years ago, I wrote the book, The Art of Raising Capital. And then Robert, Josh, Lisa, myself, we wrote a book together, but I don't remember the name of it, to be honest with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a big book writer.
Yeah, neither am I.
Yeah.
People keep telling me I should write a book about my life, and I'm like, well, which scenes are going to be pop up, and which ones are going to be scratch and sniff? You know?
Writing the book was difficult for me, but the hard part about books is you have to sell them.
Right.
And the first meeting I was invited to with Robert, it was actually when Robert's book was published by Warner Brothers, I believe, and it was the #1 best-selling book in the New York Times. And the president of Warner Brothers says the reason that Robert Kiyosaki's book is so well sold is because he's the hardest working guy. He's always out there promoting the book. So that was a good lesson too. If you're not out there promoting a book, who's going to buy your book? There's thousands and thousands of books, right? But yeah, I did write one or two, but it's not my forte.
Yeah. You got to believe in yourself a lot, which is something a lot of us struggle with. Yeah. I'm working on that. On that myself. So, final question here. If a warrior's listening to this right now, feels overwhelmed, whether they are rebuilding after addiction, trauma, financial hardship, or just trying to create a better future, what would you want them to hear? What is the one thing that you want them to focus on in this moment?
Well, obviously, you need to get your health first and foremost, and that's where the professionals at Warrior Heart can come in. And finance is a big reason people get divorced, and there's so much stress in the world. So I would just suggest, from a financial perspective, put some effort into the education. We don't teach it in school. Money is not something you need to be afraid of or scared of. There's an abundance of it. So study, get some experience, and start to put some focus into money, and you can have a lot more money in your life if that's what you choose. But first and foremost, hopefully it's your health.
Outstanding. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And for anybody that's listening out there wants to reach out and get their health back on track, get started with recovery, if you're of the warrior class struggling with substance use disorder, PTSD, you need the help, give us a call, 855-610-1003. Well, I appreciate you, Darren, very much for being here today and educating us a little bit on finances. And this is something that I'm going to take another deeper dive into because it's been on my mind a lot here lately. So thank you very much for coming in and educating us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
All right.
First thing that they said was welcome home.